Hi, my name's Karina Walter, and welcome to the Standard Newsroom. I'm here with Mayor Walter Senzik from St. Catharines.
Great to be in the new digs there.
Yeah.
This is a nice new studio you got.
We've lost our red wall, but
You still have the picture. The view is amazing. You're in the heart of the city now, not on the edge. You're in the heart of the city.
It's true. We're still downtown, and
Yes.
for those who don't know, you can find us at 55 King Street on the 6th floor. And we haven't seen you here for a while.
I've never seen you here before.
No.
I only saw you at the other location.
That's right. But you were very busy in January.
Yes.
So we didn't have you for Ask Senzik Chat with the Mayor. And then in February, we were moving. So there's been a lot that's happened.
There's been a lot going on.
2 months.
And we're looking forward to a lot more stuff being announced. But yeah, it's been a busy 2.5 months of things going on in the city of St. Catharines.
You did your State of the City.
That was a long time ago.
It was, yeah.
It feels like a long time ago.
And you also went to Red Deer for the Canada Winter Games.
Yeah.
What did you learn there that you can bring back for the Canada Summer Games here?
Hey, honestly, Karina, it was an eye-opener to drive into Red Deer and see how the community had prepared for the Winter Games and participating in the opening ceremonies at their spectator sports facility, much like the Meridian Center in St. Catharines, and seeing the 4,000 athletes come in and their families and the community getting behind the games, that was an eye-opener for me. And then seeing the venues, and I think this is the important thing, Karina, is that the venues themselves, the number of new venues that were created as part of the Winter Games, the legacy that goes with those projects. And so we got to tour a number of the different venues and ask questions about how they were developed and why they were developed, and got to talk to the mayor of Red Deer. We spent time with city staff of Red Deer. We had our staff, economic development from the city, and our deputy CAO, David Oakes, was there as well. And really to have those conversations about what were some of the positives and what were some of the challenges. And really at the end of it, even the staff of Red Deer were saying, this was something that really brought the community together and also create an opportunity so that the next generation of families growing up in Red Deer have access to now what is world-class venues. And we're looking at that from the perspective of Niagara. Our expectation is the federal and provincial governments will come to the table with significant capital funds that will allow us to create these legacy projects that will last for the next 30, 40 years. And anyone who had an opportunity to go to Red Deer from Niagara or from the provincial federal government really saw how important it is to have the games being performed in venues that are best in class. And I think that was a big eye-opener for us. And it's really exciting coming back here. We're going to get games ready right now. This is fantastic.
What is the city's kind of next step for that? Because I know the region is involved, Brock is involved, the different levels of the province and the feds are involved.
We've allocated funds already to the games. Council has approved funds for infrastructure developments that will take place as part of the games. There's a couple of bigger pieces that are happening with Brock University and the Canada Games Host Society and with Thorold and St. Catharines. So we're waiting for that project to fully come to fruition. And then it's going to be, the next 2.5 years is going to be an all-out push to get games ready.
Some of the other things that have happened when we're talking about building over the last couple of years, the Port Dalhousie Union waterfront property was sold to Tom Rankin. What's some of the feedback that you've been hearing about that since that announcement?
You couldn't have asked for a better company to get involved in a site that has been a challenge for more than a decade. And I think what you get with Rankin Construction is a company that knows how to build, they know how to work with community, they're part of the fabric of our community. And Tom Rankin is probably one of the best visionary people that we've ever produced here in the city, that we've ever had as part of our community. And so, you know, there's going to be some challenges and discussions that are going to have to take place between the planning department of the city of St. Catharines and what their vision is for the site. But what I appreciate is you've now got someone who understands the history, understands our community, and someone who I think is willing to work, as we saw with the Legion project. You know, everyone said that couldn't be done, and I'm talking about the Port Dalhousie Legion, and how people said that you would never be able to get a project through in Port Dalhousie. And Rankin Construction in the city of St. Catharines, we got it through in record time, and they're already starting to build there. So I think sometimes you need the right developer to come to the table at the right time, and that's what we have here.
I mean, it has been 15 years now that
Yeah.
property's been talked about, and there've been a lot of community, angst about it.
That was before Facebook.
It was, yeah. So it's kind of
That's
crazy.
how long it was.
Yeah. So you think there is a possibility that they could actually, that there is something that could be built there that the community will be happy with?
I don't think you're going to make everybody happy on anything, and I think that's just human nature. Is that whether you look at the Lincoln Fabric site or the Rankin Legion site, what you see is that you're never going to make everybody happy. What you want to do is make sure that you've got an appropriate development that helps to create a sense of community in the space in which you're growing. And the reality is that we've got to grow as a city. So this whole mindset that it should just be 3 stories or 2 stories or 1 story, those days are gone. And cities that are really thriving today are cities that are growing up. And so we're looking forward to having a good discussion at council about whatever proposal they come forward with. And at least we know that when we look across the table, we know who we're dealing with. It's not some faceless corporation in Toronto or something.
We've also heard that the St. Catharines Police Station, the money's now in place for that. There's a contractor.
Long time coming on
That's
that, too.
been a long one as well. When do you think we're going to actually see something built there?
I think you got a new board at the Niagara Regional Police. You got a great new chair, and so a new chair, a new board, and looks like you've got great new vision. So you finally have a group of people that understand, I believe, what policing is and that relationship between community and policing. We were promised last term, it's going to start in October, it's going to start in January, it's going to start in the fall. Just kept kicking the can down the road. This board gets together. First thing they do is they have an opportunity and they award it to Merit Contractor, another great local company. And now we got the ball rolling. So, now we've got the right people around the table at the Niagara Regional Police Board, and I think you're going to see some positive things happen in there as well.
How do you think that's going to change that area once the police station is built, and how's it going to affect that downtown when I guess they move out?
Well, I think there's opportunities with the new build. You're going to change anytime you put in a new structure of that size in a neighborhood, you're going to actually change how people see that neighborhood. You're going to change traffic flows and people that are coming in and out of that space. And so I think you're going to see an upward trajectory on assessments on properties in there. You probably see some transactions take place. The downtown one, it's a site that could be very, very well configured into, and I would say, residential living. One of our identifiers for building a thriving downtown is having more people live in our downtown. We don't have a lot of space in terms of which we can grow, and that is a fairly decent-sized footprint. So we're hoping that working with the region, we can have an opportunity to work with a developer to, again, grow up. And you're right across the road from the library. Market Square's right there, the First Ontario Performing Arts Center. We got more and more people who want to live in the downtown. Let's create living in the downtown that is multi-residential so that you have a diversity of living quarters, and that's what we'll be hoping for in that property.
Okay. We had some questions from some readers. We asked them if they had any questions for you. So I wanted to address the Burgoyne Bridge first, both the question from the reader and also some of the financial conversations that have been going on at the region about it. We had a reader on Twitter ask, how many more people need to take their lives before something is done? Too many have died. Do something. I know that at the last council meeting there was some discussion about this. There are some regional councillors who are opposing barriers at the bridge. I think you've obviously been in favor of them. What do you think about the opposition to the barriers, and is there anything that the city can do at this point to move that along?
So first, it's a great question, and there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes. The design work on the structure is taking place. The engineering has been engaged. The engineers have been engaged. The CAO at the region has taken this as a priority. So the next step is to come back with the design. The money has been allocated in the budget, so it's not like a councillor was able to take it out of the budget. It's in the budget. We're just waiting for final design approval. I think once Dr. Hergy, who is our acting Chief Public Health Officer, once he comes in front of council with his report, which, as he mentioned in the paper, is recommending having barriers established and erected, that you'll see a consensus around council. I'm confident of that. Some people have called it, a travesty that you would invest this type of dollar. People have to understand this is a capital investment. You can't just take capital funds and allocate it to operations. Operations is an annual fee or annual cost that you would be putting into your budget. This is a one-time capital expense that would create protective measures on public infrastructure. This whole question that people talk about, well, we have to do it across all public infrastructures that cross other roads. That's not a, it's a very weak argument, because when you look at Toronto and what they did with the Blue River Viaduct, that was a place where a lot of folks had gone to take their life. And what had happened is when they put the veil up there, their death by suicide went down to almost 0%. And then they looked at a scan around Toronto and they saw that there was no spikes anywhere else. So this whole philosophy that, well, you got to put them everywhere, that it doesn't hold water, and Dr. Hergy is going to be bringing forward research to show that. So that's that side of the equation, and I gotta say to the reader, there's a lot of people working really hard behind the scenes to make sure this gets done, and I'm confident that at the end of the day, council will see their way through this.
Okay. While we're on that subject, I wanted to ask about the Bridge Task Force was brought up at a Public Works meeting, and you were saying that there were a lot of flaws in the project. Can you expand on that? And you were talking about how you wanted to ensure that mistakes that were made don't happen again in the future.
So I was on the task force, the Burgoyne Bridge Task Force, and one of the reasons why I wanted to be on that task force was to look at how the decision-making process was taking place and where the decisions were being made, was all the information being provided. And what the task force clearly showed through working through the process, whether it was with Deloitte or with internal staff, is that there was a lot of breakdown in information sharing. There was a lot of information that was withheld. And what I'm hoping for out of the final recommendations of the task force is that the public will see where the information breakdown occurred, how it led to decisions that may not have been in the best interest of the community and the region, and how do we close those gaps moving forward. So as our procurement policies, looking at our approval policies, looking at things such as what is the upset amount that a director can sign off on a contract or a check. And that's important, because if you're doing consulting work and it's $25,000 to do a piece of consulting that pertains to a project, but that piece is very important, and that director can sign off on it, and maybe his or her buddy is an engineer and they're able to secure that $25,000 small contract, but that then starts a cascading of decisions that lead to an incorrect decision. How do we put a check and balance there? So it's not about council trying to put the check there to make sure it's correct. It's about council putting in a process that makes sure that there's another individual or department that would oversee that check off. I've been an overseer of the region as Chamber of Commerce for a long time. And we noted early on, probably at least 7 or 8 years ago, that there were significant gaps in approval processes. And this, I'm not blaming anybody, but it's such a big organization, and they refuse to do audits. They refuse to do, when I say audits, internal audits. And when you have a corporation or an entity or a group of people that turn away from an internal audit, which is essentially just looking over your processes and making sure you're following policy, when you have an organization like that that refused to do that, and that was going back 6 years ago, that's the immediate flag that there's things going on there that they don't want people to see. So I'm proud of the work that the task force did on uncovering those process deficiencies, and what I want the public to see is that those process deficiencies have been rectified.
So is there a change being made going forward for future projects?
Yes, there has already, procurement changes have been made, and that what we wanted of the report is to show, here's what the recommendations were for closing the deficiencies, and here's what the staff have already done, because they're already working on doing that. And that's, when you look at what's happened across the country with other firms that have gotten into trouble in other municipalities, because we've seen them all, there's many examples of it. I don't think Niagara was immune to it. So I just want to make sure that moving forward, we can stop a lot of this stuff before it even begins.
Right. Yeah, I guess just overall with changes at the region, since we haven't talked to you since December, have things changed at the region a lot since the last term? And do you think that we're going to see some of the decisions that were made last term perhaps change this time around?
There's a different climate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the climate is one of consensus building. The climate is one of respect for one another, and that's at the council level. I think there's a different interface now with staff. It's not a conflict. It's how do we work with staff in a better way. I think we've got right now an interim CAO that is proving to be a very strong leader, and we're really starting to move the needle on where the region should be focusing its attention. I can tell you the last 4 years there was so much infighting and bitterness and just secrecy that you didn't know if you were actually making a difference in terms of the decision making. Now you can actually start seeing it. And I'm confident because I think the people around the table today are focused on doing the good things that move Niagara forward, not getting caught in the politics that kept us back for so many years.
One of the first decisions, I guess, that the council did make is increasing, the salaries for councillors.
Didn't increase.
Well,
so it's a misnomer to say that increase. It was due to a tax policy brought in by the federal government that changed the taxable benefit, not just for Niagara. It's across the country. Whoever had that built into their municipal structure. So St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland, we all had it. That as of January 1st, 2019, that taxable benefit was removed by the federal government. That in itself would have reduced council remuneration. So it would have taken it, so some councillors at the region would have been between $2,500 to $3,000 a reduction in what their remuneration was. So what municipalities did was put into their budget what would be the commensurate amount that would then bring it back up to what it would be in 2018. So there was no pay increase. It was just a shifting. The federal government shifted its tax policy, created a negative for remuneration for councillors, and then what municipalities did was just made the councillors whole again with no increase. So it wasn't an increase. It was simply just adjusting the remuneration to reflect the federal government closing or changing its tax policy. So that's the frustration, because if the amount wasn't increased of what the remuneration was for councillors, in essence in 2019 all councils would have taken a significant, more than a 10% pay reduction in the comparative to the year of 2018. So it wasn't an increase.
Do you think it was bad optics though?
I think potentially councillors were wanting to play with the optics of it. City of St. Catharines, it went through. There was no comment. In Niagara Falls, it went through. There was very little comment, and it's because it was properly explained. I would say maybe it wasn't explained well enough to council, and so some of the new councillors saw it as a pay increase. And when you actually look at it and read the report and listen to the rationale, it made a lot more sense. And I think that's why councillors changed their mind, because they realized it wasn't a pay increase. It was bringing the pay back up to 2018.
When it comes to councillor expenses, because we know that regional councillors can also expense quite a bit of stuff, do you think that those expenses should be more detailed, like the kind that you release
sure.
as the mayor of St. Catharines with your own expenses through the St. Catharines office?
Yep, I think you should increase you should have what I would, if it was in a perfect world, you would itemize who did you go to lunch with, what was the topics that you were talking about, or if you received a gift, where did you receive the gift and who was it from? Those are easy to capture, and it's best practice, right? So if you actually have an opportunity to list on the back of your receipt for a lunch meeting, I met with this person and we were talking about 2 or 3 items. There's nothing wrong with that. And then if the person says, I'm uncomfortable having this lunch with you and talking about this, then come to my office. Come to council. If you can't, if somebody, and I get there's legalities around some property issues or legal matters and all that, but you can still put general topics that you talked about. What's wrong with that? Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Is that going to be changed at the region at all?
I think through the expense policy, you'll probably see a request for more detailed accounting. And it doesn't have to be overtly cumbersome. It just has to be, here's who you had dinner with, and here's the topics that you discussed. That's it.
Okay. We're almost out of time already, but we do have some questions from readers I just wanted to get to as well. A couple about snow in particular.
Yeah, we don't want snow anymore.
Well, I don't want any snow anymore, but Lori Hart Hodgson on Twitter was asking, what are you planning to do about businesses that don't remove snow from their sidewalks, forcing wheelchair users onto main streets because their chairs can't get through?
That's got to be one of the highest volume of calls that we get, whether it's residential or business, is about the wheelchairs and people with mobility issues that can't get through snow that hasn't been removed from the sidewalks. And so what they don't see, what the readers or the listeners don't see, is the fact that we are fining businesses. Our bylaw officers are out there, and so after 24 hours, if it hasn't been cleared, they are fining them. If they choose not to clear, then we'll go in there and try and do our best to clear the sidewalk. It's an education. We're trying to get to the businesses and through the BIAs to make them understand that when you don't clear your sidewalks, you're preventing pedestrian traffic from getting to your place of business. There's some vacant stores downtown, and those ones we're saying to the landlords or the owners, if you don't clear your sidewalks, we're gonna fine you for it. And I believe that what you're seeing now is more of an appetite to just either increase the fines or shorten the timelines for the fines. So if it's 24 hours, then within the 24 hours, just establish the fine right away. Don't even give them a warning, just put the fine out there. And that sounds harsh, but I think if you just start fining some folks when it comes to, if they're not gonna clean their sidewalks, they'll learn pretty quick that either pay the $200 fine or pay $20 to have your sidewalk cleared.
How does the city respond to those? Is it, do you have people out actually looking at sidewalks to see if they're cleared, or is it by a complaint basis?
It's still complaint basis unless our crew is in the downtown area. Then when they're in the downtown area, okay, they can be knocking on doors, or they can be attempting to get a hold of. If it's a vacant business, it's hard to get a hold of someone. A lot of our complaints would come in, and then we would send a crew out. So it's complaint driven unless our crew is in the downtown area, say, and they see a sidewalk. But I just got to say, we're going to start being more aggressive in our fining. So those who choose not to clear the sidewalks, be prepared to find a fine in your mailbox.
Okay. The other question was about snow parking. I just did a story today talking to the city about snow parking, and people aren't really getting the idea yet that they should be moving their vehicles when there's a big winter storm. I have somebody, Patsy, asking, when will the city get serious about snow parking and start handing out tickets?
It's probably going, well, I think it's going to start in the next sort of winter period. We've given people a lot of information, a lot of education on the need to remove your vehicles off the roads where possible. And I think the next step, what you'll see from council and a report to council probably by the summertime, will be it's time to now embark on the finding set. We wanted to give people enough time to get familiar with it, but as you've reported, the uptake hasn't been exactly overwhelming. And again, unfortunately, I think when you hit someone in the pocketbook and they have to pay a fine, they're going to think twice about a major snow event and not moving their vehicle. Again, other communities have done it. You've got communities in Ontario, you've got communities in Quebec where they have fines aligned to, if you don't remove your cars that you're able to remove, you will be fined during snow events. It's just, we're trying to clear the snow off as quickly as possible, but we can't do it when we have people parked all over the streets, and especially when they can pull into the driveway, even for a night.
What if you have people who have 2 cars in a single driveway and there's a sidewalk across it?
Well, one of the things that we do is also notify the city of what locations you're in, and we can help identify. So an example of this is that you got Hague Bowl. In a certain geographical area of Hague Bowl and down to in Midtown St. Catharines, if there's a major snow event, there's about 60 parking spots there. So is there an opportunity to park at Hague Bowl overnight, and then you walk to your place of where you're living? Just using places like that you can hopefully utilize so that you can get off the street and then get back into your location once the plows have come through. But we all have to work together on this. It's just people have to realize that there's going to be a fine associated with not removing your cars in a fixed period of time.
Okay. We have run out of time, so I'll have to save the questions about the dog limit bylaws and Memorial School for
the next
month.
one, which will be April.
April. So you
April
can.
flowers bring, April showers bring May flowers.
I think so.
I think that's how it goes.
Yeah, I think you're
So
right.
April, I'll bring the showers.
I'll bring the flowers. Yeah, so you can send questions for our April chat by tweeting them with the hashtag AskSensic, or you can email them to me at karina.walter@niagaradailies.com. Thanks for joining us in our new office.
I'm liking it. I'm liking it.
Thanks.
Nice digs.